it's great.
It sets a tone.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I'm Steve Reeves, the Bull of American Broadcasting. This is the great Chris Morganti. How are you, Chris?
I'm hot, Steve.
It's very warm.
The dog days of summer are upon us.
They're upon us, unless you're watching this some other time of year or in some other place. So Joe Matarese is a bumbling, glorified middle act in the world of stand-up comedy. And some years ago, long before there was a Dabbleverse, there existed a podcast called Monumental Waste of Time, hosted by our friend Karen from Philly.
Yes.
And some gal called A+. Grown woman, Chris, goes by A+.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no idea what she's up to these days.
Yeah.
I refuse to Google it.
Well, that podcast was dedicated to covering Joe Matarese's antics on stage and off. Well, I appeared as a guest on that program, and in contrast to Monumental Waste of Time's largely indifferent or even positive attitude toward Joe, I was highly critical about how the man conducted his career, the way he treated his fans, and I also made it clear that I was no fan of his stand-up, which I found to be generic and jokeless. So Joe himself heard that episode, because why wouldn't he listen to a fan podcast of his? What a narcissist. Well, he heard that episode, and it enraged him, and he demanded that I return to MWAT, as the listeners called it, so he could debate me and really give me what for, Chris.
No, I did not realize that's how this came about.
Yes.
So this was, he kind of, much like an event that happened last week where someone requested a debate and it did not go the way that they envisioned. Yeah, I didn't know that's how this went down. Okay.
Yeah. Because last week in our timeline, there was a debate between two former presidents.
Yeah. Good one.
So I took Joe's bait, if you want to call it. Although I wouldn't really call it that.
Right.
Some might say it was the other way around. And I went ahead and reappeared on Monumental Waste of Time, and he and I had a little tete-a-tete. But things didn't play out the way Joe had hoped. So on a recent episode of Who Are These Podcasts, Jody from the Po' Boys podcast was a guest, and he brought along the audio of my argument with Joe for Carl, Chris, and Cardiff. Hey, remember Cardiff?
Right.
He's in this. He was a guest on the show on the same day here. And he brought along that audio for those guys to discuss. And they're about to hear Joe explain why I'm not a valid judge of comedy. Now, it's very important to note that during this exchange, Joe is at his son's Little League game.
What does that have to do with whether or not you behave in a questionable way? You conduct your career in a way.
Who doesn't do roofs, what he thinks of the roof job you did. You don't ask the guy who does electrical how good the roof looks.
Can I ask you one more thing?
You ask the guy who's the roofer.
Joe,
you're not a valid opinion. You're a fucking waste.
But if I live under the roof, I can determine whether or not it's a decent roof.
Yes.
You don't need to be a roofer to know whether it's a good
Not
roof.
from a
You're just a roof. You're a roof consumer.
You're from the distance opinion, dude. You're giving an opinion from a distance.
Does Joe think he's going to win this argument at some point?
He could only win if he said something funny.
Right.
Just stay down, Joe.
Right.
Come on, God
stay
damn
down.
it.
Yeah, it's like the stay down thing. At some point, Steve's just going to be like, you're right, Joe. I'll give you that one. Like, no, it's just going to go on forever. That's what he wants.
Yeah. Not the first and not the last time things wouldn't go Joe's way. Just days after my in absentia appearance on WATP, Joe Matarese went ahead and did the most Joe Matarese thing ever. He went live on YouTube, Chris, from outside a pizza pub where he was about to perform in Stamford, Connecticut. And he told his handful of viewers that he wrote down a list of topics on the way over, and then he was just going to go on stage and riff on those topics.
Sure. That sounds like a great idea.
No material.
Yeah.
Now, we would watch that, but that and the subsequent part of Joe's video, they've been lost to history because Joe deleted it, but not before Stallion19 was able to capture the stand-up portion of the video. So I'm going to tell you the rest of what's missing. Joe enters the restaurant through the upstairs bar.
Okay.
And there's a soccer match on TV. Now, Joe says that it's never a good sign when there's a soccer match on in a bar, which is an odd complaint from someone whose entire personality is being Italian. So Joe takes us downstairs to the venue. The show is actually taking place on the lower level.
Gotcha.
And another comic is finishing his set, and Joe whispers into his phone something like, "This is terrible," as he surveys the scene. Now, before long, it's time for your headliner. Yes, this is a headlining set for Joe. In fact, when Joe walked in the door, the live viewers could see a standee at the hostess stand advertising this gig as part of Joe's 97.3% Italian comedy tour. You ready to see how Joe kicks things off?
Sure.
Okay, let's see this.
Show, Matarese. Wow, that was really good. You guys really killed it there. Thank you for clapping like you had pretty much no idea who the final comedian was going to be.
Yes. Now, allow me to interject a question here, Steve. He's streaming this on YouTube while he's also performing here.
Yes.
Do those people, they don't pay him any, like that's not behind a paywall or anything, is it?
No.
Because I can't understand. It was very difficult for me to understand anything that's said here. And
well, because you're expecting comedy. See, that's where you're mistaken.
No, I'm expecting.
No, you're hearing what he's saying and you're thinking, wow, a funny person who's a professional stand-up comedian would not be saying these things.
Well,
you actually did hear the words he said. You just, your brain rejected them because they don't represent any assemblage of stand-up comedy.
I suppose that's possible. Yeah. But I think what I was saying is if I was watching this on YouTube, I would immediately turn it off because the audio quality is so poor.
Right, I understand.
In addition to the content quality, which we'll have to judge for ourselves here.
Yeah, now we just heard that Joe is already displeased. Not for not having received applause. He did.
Right.
The crowd received him, politely.
Yeah.
But Joe is not happy with the type of applause he received.
No.
Joe wants the kind of ovation that, say, a Dave Chappelle might get from an audience.
Yeah.
When he takes the stage and the crowd applauds in a way that they want to say, man, we love your entire body of work up to this point, and we're really looking forward to what you're going to do tonight.
Okay.
Joe doesn't get that because Joe hasn't earned that. And that's a concept that's completely lost on him. So Joe Matarese, live at Town Parlor Pizza, continues.
How are you here on a Saturday night going to see someone you didn't know who it was going to be? Did you just what happened? Did they grab you on the street? You were walking by and you were like, and then boom, next thing you know, you're at an Italian comedy show.
Yeah, smart move, Joe. Hey, folks, you don't know who I am. Why did you come here? What is wrong with you? Don't you losers have anything better to do?
Well, that's him riffing. So get ready for 44 more minutes of that.
It's such a bonehead maneuver. But if Joe went on to be funny, the audience might forgive him for taking that attitude. But Joe can't help but let his distaste for this gig be known. The condescension, and perhaps the condensation continues.
If it was like tonight outside, then yeah.
City? Do you know how much better I thought this was going to be while I was driving up here? You think I knew I was going to a 30-person pizza place? Do you think? I thought I was coming to a place called the Town Parlor. Like, doesn't that sounded like whoa! I thought there would be about 700 people here.
Yeah. All right, a couple things, Chris. If Joe were on a tour of A-room comedy clubs in major cities, they wouldn't be 700-seaters.
Okay.
At best, Joe could expect to draw 200 to 300, and that's nothing to be ashamed of.
No.
Also, your job, Joe, is not to complain about how disappointing this situation is for you. Your job is to make this a good time for everyone else. This situation he's in here reminds me of a place you and I performed probably 20 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
Called Flatspin. It was like a restaurant bar at a commuter airport.
Yeah.
And they used to have us in this big room.
Yeah.
It was very cavernous, not befitting our audience or what we could expect to draw.
Yeah.
But so I guess we did that a few times, and then they moved us into the bar.
Yeah.
Now, by into the bar, I mean at the end of the bar with a Mr. Microphone.
Yeah.
And
you're no longer using the house audio system
Yes.
at that point. Yeah.
Yes. And standing at the end of the bar, but between the end of the bar and the fryer. So anytime it's Philadelphia, anytime someone ordered a steak, which happens frequently.
Yeah.
So I was in Home Depot the other day. And all right, well, just wait for this to run its course.
Yeah.
And I'll continue with my japes. So, but you can make it work.
Steve, one other thing about that gig. I remember the first show we did, open bar for the comics.
Yes.
And the next, that ended right after the first show.
Well, that often happens with us.
Yeah. Yeah, not only the lack of patrons, but also the abuse of the open bar system that our group of comics. Yeah.
Well, let's face it, our career was a grift from the beginning, wasn't it? Oh man. So, yeah, these people in the audience here. Now, they're the good guys, Joe. You may not be impressed by their size or by their fervor, but they're there and they're willing to be entertained by you. You don't take out the people who didn't show up on the people who did. They're the good guys. They're your friends, Joe. They want to like you, but you think you're too good to perform in a pizza parlor when, Joe, you're exactly as good as performing in a pizza parlor.
And normally you'd open up by maybe making fun of the town, like their traffic or their, whatever. Or if you think they have too much civic pride, you make fun of the town next door to them. And they all love that. But you don't usually insult the audience. Or if you do, just go all in and eventually get them laughing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he does go all in, but not in the way you suggested.
Okay.
Joe does spend some time talking about Stamford, but it's more like he sounds like he's talking about, what did you do 8 weeks ago? This was unlivable. Why is everybody here now? I couldn't park. Had to park a mile away. Brilliant guy tells an audience who turns out to hate him where he parked. That's never a smart move. So now Joe starts to explain his intentions for this set. The improv gimmick.
Okay.
He's going for.
I was driving up here, I kind of had this feeling that this might be kind of a weird gig. And I did just put out a brand new comedy special called Mullets and Mixtapes. It came out about 12 days ago.
Okay, can folks stop referring to YouTube videos as comedy specials? There's no regularly scheduled YouTube programming for your little I Love the 80s ripoff to preempt. And that's exactly what Joe's comedy special is. Remembering the 80s. Congratulations, Joe. You don't have dementia. Do not call that comedy. Let's continue.
And now I'm trying to start over with all new material. And then these are the kind of shows you do where you don't give a fuck. And you gotta just start building. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we do, Joe. And this is not the time or the place. There are plenty of clubs in town where you can do that. Just go do a quick set, riff on anything you like, work on some new stuff. But whether you think the gig is beneath you or not, you're being paid to headline, not to open mic. And what's extra frustrating here, there's an obvious solution, Chris.
What's that?
Joe established from the off that these people have no idea who he is. And they're not even from South Dakota. So it follows that they haven't seen his YouTube video. Why not just do that material? Get through it and go home. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Well, none of that ends up mattering because Joe's focus, it shifts dramatically.
Oh my God, YouTube, I didn't notice this. There's a mom here with 2 6-year-olds. No wonder this sucks. How can this? You can't do this. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's why.
I'm not clean. I'm not a clean comedian. How old is he? You're 8. Oh yes, I'm sure he wants to hear about pubes and vaginas.
Yeah. As opposed to everyone else who just came here to hear about how unworthy they are to be in Joe's presence. Now, Jim, I have a screenshot I want to share with the folks. This is the set list that Joe jotted down on the way over, and here are the topics he planned to cover. Now, I want to offer a word of warning. If you're watching this in the presence of minors, you might want to ask them to leave the room.
Oh, sure, yeah.
When I read this, these adult topics. Ready? Here's what it says. Trump-Biden debate, son looking for colleges, son driving, pulled over, drinking at the same party, daughter total opposite. Here's my favorite. Gene does the running. What could that possibly be?
I don't know.
Our dog Ozzy snores. Doesn't bother me. Wife high maintenance, low maintenance. Can't plan trips with my high school friends. Playing baseball at 56. I get trolled a ton. I answer them. Yeah, that always works out well for you, Joe. My special isn't doing well on YouTube. It's for 45 to 70. Is that stupid?
Huh.
Here's all I can say about that. Man, I'm just glad someone is picking up the mantle Bob Saget left behind. All right, this last clip is a little long, but we should watch this play out in real time.
Okay.
I don't know. You can't bring kids to a comedy show. And the YouTube, there's the one next to her is even younger. So we have an 8-year-old. They're twins? That's another 8-year-old? Have you been sitting there the whole time with the kids? Right in the fucking front row. One of them has headphones on. Like, they better be really good noise cancellation. Headphones. Oh my God. Now I want to be dirtier. I want you to leave. I'm very uncomfortable right now. I don't feel comedy doesn't work with little kids in the room. Did you pay a cover? Did you pay the cover? No, you didn't. Get the fuck out of here now. I'm sorry, we just can't do comedy with 2 little kids sitting right there. It's weird. Especially while I'm streaming to live right now. I'm filming this.
What difference would that make, Steve?
I'm
None.
kicking you out.
Zero.
I'm just, these people paid to come in and see the show, and I'm not going to be able to be funny. I'll have to talk about, like, Barney. What can I talk about with 8-year-olds in the crowd? All right, now it's really uncomfortable. This is good. No. I mean, it's they think I'm doing something bad. That's just the way. This is how my career goes, by the way. As soon as I hit live, there's 8-year-olds in the fucking room. I'm gonna have to shut the live off. Does this wire each other? No? All right, well, this is fun. This will be good for the live. This will be good for the live. If you paid, I'll give you your money back. Not my money. Did you pay? She didn't pay. Were they the most lenient door guys in the history of comedy working here? How about an 8-year-old? That lady's
It's a pizza
everybody's
place.
leaving. Everybody's leaving. Were you guys with her? Yeah, this is gonna be great. Good thing I got paid in advance.
Do you think he got paid in advance?
Well, we're going to find out, Chris.
Yeah, okay.
And I'd like folks to remember that he said that. Remember it like it's the 80s. So he ends the stream, and if you didn't pick up on that, it's quite all right because it really isn't spelled out. But Joe booted the woman and the 2 kids, but other people left with them, shrinking Joe's already paltry audience.
Yeah.
So Joe, I guess he finished his set, filled his time, left the stage, or more accurately, that particular part of the dance floor, and deleted what we just watched. But he wasn't done engaging with social media. On the way back to his car, he went live again and recapped his night to an audience of several.
Live. Finally, they leave. And now, when I'm doing the material,
The woman and the
crowd's
kids
pulling back. And I'm like, are you guys mad at me that I made her leave? I mean, she was there with her 8-year-olds, and they're like, you know, you could have handled that. You could have handled that. And
Yep.
I'm like, well, I was uncomfortable with it.
All that
I
matters,
don't know.
right, Joe?
I don't know. I wasn't thinking about the crowd and that you guys
Why would you
be comfortable with it. And I'm uncomfortable doing comedy with little kids sitting right next to me. It feels odd and weird, and I don't want that. And then the whole crowd hated me. So push comes to shove. I want you to know this. I find out at the end. This is classic. This is fucking my luck. The
Nope,
one
it's your
time I decided
arrogance
to
and
try
stupidity.
something a little weird and film myself doing a set live and let YouTube people watch it, I find out that lady who was with the kids was like best friends with this other lady who bought all these tickets for all the people that were there because it was a fundraiser for some dog organization.
He said push comes to shove.
That was a misuse.
That's not the idiom he's going for there. I think, as it turns out, I think is what he was going for there.
Yeah. Not a bright guy. A colossal fish sandwich, Chris. So what do you think happens next? Does Joe exhibit humility? Regret? Contrition? Or does he just start pointing fingers elsewhere? Let's find out together, shall we?
And the guy that hired me, he never told me that. I had no idea that this was a fundraiser. I had no idea that the lady that's with the two kids is even in the audience. Like, you would have thought he would have came up to me and said, "Hey, Joe, there's a lady in the front row with two little kids. Just ignore them because her friend paid for half the audience's tickets because they're raising money for this organization."
You
That's
could have
what
done
I
that
did
anyway.
to help fill the room a little bit tonight. And I would have been like, okay, but no one fucking told me.
Well, they assumed you were a professional.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Their mistake.
Their mistake. It is indeed that guy's fault.
Yeah.
For sure.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our Joe. So Joe said from the stage that he got paid up front for this gig. Now, in comedy, and I'm sure you would agree with this, that's not exactly taboo, but it's definitely considered bad form.
To what? Get paid up front?
No, to mention that on stage.
Oh, to mention it. Yeah.
That you're getting paid, how much you're getting paid, that you get paid whether folks laugh or not. No one but you cares about your paycheck, and it comes off as rude and arrogant if you rub it in the crowd's face.
Yeah.
It helps them not like you.
And he's already done a very good job of that.
Yes, he did everything possible to make sure they didn't. And not in an Andy Kaufman kind of clever messing with the audience way.
Right.
And let me see if I can dig myself out, Bill Burr kind of way.
Yeah,
No.
that's what I was saying earlier about you just lean into it and really go hard, but
No. He's just a miserable, clueless son of a gun. Well, Joe not only mentioned that he got paid in advance and that he was glad he did from the stage, but it turns out that may also have been a total lie. Joe's post-show spin fest continues.
I suspected this was the case, Steve.
And I hope I get paid now. Isn't that fucking crazy?
When you spin a web of lies, it's hard to keep track of it.
I always do contracts and shit like that. I didn't do a contract. Thank you, Peter Sky Parker. I didn't do a contract. And then guy who hired me left.
Oh boy, that face at the end there, he's calculating how much money he's lost that night. Because I would just suspect they didn't pay him at all. Or gave him less than what he had been promised.
Yeah, and at this point he has been paid, and the guy who was supposed to pay him took off.
Oh, is that really what happened?
Yeah, he said he left. The guy who booked him left.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have too.
Yeah. Well, screw this guy. Screw this guy. And if this seems like some sort of random attack on Joe Matarese, especially after all these years of kind of our feud, if you want to call it that, which I never considered it, but our disagreement with one another being dormant for so long, I've spent many years wishing this guy well. I never disliked the guy as a person. I thought he was unfunny, a dim bulb, but I never thought he was a bad person until very recently, Chris. Some months ago, he started making his 7th attempt at creating a podcast.
Okay. Well, that's a few less than us. So, I mean, a few more. I meant a few more. Right.
Well, he abandoned that pretty quickly, as usual. And the reason why is because his interviewing was criticized. And his reason for his lacking in interviewing skills?
I can't even imagine.
The guests he had on weren't famous enough for him to take any interest in. That's why he was a horrible interviewer. And I just thought, Joe, I'm out. We're done. I'm not. I don't see you as a real person anymore. You don't matter.
That's a really awful thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, I could run into a guy at a bar who no one knows and have an interesting conversation with him. That says more about you than about anyone you're talking about.
Yeah, you're a professional broadcaster. That's the difference.
I think even if I was just a person, I could find interest in another human being who has lived a life and has a story to tell.
You're not a narcissist.
Oh, well, that's a... There's some people that would disagree with you on that one, Steve.
All right, well, anything we didn't talk about, you might want to talk about.
Well, I just want to say, we didn't see his whole set, and maybe it could have been funny. So I can't speak to that. But what I will speak to is, Steve, you remember a few years ago, doing one of our shows at our previous studio, I brought my daughter in. She was about 7 or 8 years old at the time, and we did a little bit up front in the beginning of the show.
It was very funny, yeah.
Yeah, and then I said, hey, take your iPad and put your headphones on, and this will just be another hour or whatever, and we'll be out of here. And it was fine. And I'm sure the 2 8-year-olds in this clip, in this situation, they would have just done the same thing. They wouldn't have had any interest in what Joe was talking about. So,
oh, you mean Gene does the running?
The only or his dog snoring. But the only defense of him could be that maybe it was inappropriate for those kids to be there, but it really wasn't.
But he just did a quote unquote special, and all that material was very tame.
Yeah. But the kids wouldn't have cared. And if the kids are interested in dirty jokes, then they're probably telling them to each other already. So, right. Yeah, I don't think this is like, he's sticking up for these kids, and it's a bad mother. I don't see that as being a situation.
No, he didn't like the situation, and he wanted to do anything he could.
Yeah,
to alleviate some of his concerns.
And he was already lowering expectations right off the bat by saying, I'm just going to be up here and, whatever.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to clear that up before we, I guess we're done.
Yeah, I think so. I think we did it. We hit the goal. Right. Did we hit the goal?
I don't know.
Hey, folks, a couple things in the description I want you to take a look at. One is there's a link there to the entire Monumental Waste of Time archive, or at least what exists these days. And also, if you're interested in what Karen's doing today, there's a link to Bird's Ear View, her house music, not so much a podcast, it's like a DJ session. And she talks about the music. And speaking of Bird's Ear View, I did something for Bird's Ear View not long ago. It's called the Rock and Roll Project. And it's classic rock and stories about the songs and also about my life, if you're curious. All of those things can be found below. Please check them out. All right, I think we hit the goal in that case. For Chris Morgani, Jim Corhan, I'm Steve Reeves. Oscar Baby.
Oscar Wawa.
Holy Maganao.
Tigers.
Either all we did it.
The Reeves Company.